Hello everybody, and welcome to our favourite flower of the month. Our flower of the month this month in May is the peony. Probably the most popular article on our blog currently, well actually not just currently, over the last year or so, has been peonies versus garden roses. So we thought today we'd take some time, as I say, peony is our flower of the month for May, showing you how peonies versus garden roses can actually work. Beautiful peonies here, obviously favoured for their shape. They're beautiful, romantic, frothy blooms. Really symbolises purity, romance, very much used in the wedding industry. They obviously have their beautiful fragrance as well. They are seasonally available from April to July. I would say possibly the only downside with a peony is they are so stubborn to develop and so unpredictable. It can be anything from 3 to 5 days to fully develop. Occasionally they will come into us in this kind of tight bud, when what you actually want is this. So yeah, very, very difficult to predict as well. It does also depend, the development does depend on the grade that you buy. Obviously if you buy a lower grade that's going to be smaller, you're going to get a very tight bud like this. If you buy a heavier, bigger grade, you could end up with a bud like this, and obviously the development is going to be quicker for something that's in that stage than it is for this stage. We are often asked advice on development times for peonies, and unfortunately for us it's just as difficult as it is for you out there, because we don't always know what stage they're going to arrive at us with, development wise. So yeah, so basically that's probably the downsides. I would also say possibly the season is another affecting factor, because they are only really available from April till July, when everybody wants them all year round for the wedding season, especially as the wedding season has now expanded to being year round. We can source them out of season from New Zealand, Chile and Israel, but they're not such a good quality, and they do hold a price tag, as you can imagine. With them being out of season, when the demand is there, the price will stay high, and they do command a decent price tag, I have to say. They're normally sold in bunches of 10 or 20. So yeah, that's our peonies for you. As you can see, there's nothing quite like them really. However, garden roses do have their place. So garden roses very much loved for their shape and their fragrance. You've got Colombian garden roses, Ecuadorian garden roses and David Austin roses. Got a few samples here just to go through and show you. So just to illustrate how garden roses can compare with peonies, we've got some David Austin blooms here. Now this particular one here is Juliet, quite peachy in its colour tone, and this one is Kiera. You can see they've very much got that peony-esque feeling to the centre of the bloom. They are much more predictable in their development times. I would normally recommend for a Saturday wedding that you perhaps take delivery on Wednesday or Thursday, depending on the time of the year. They will arrive like this, quite tightly packed. Cut them and condition them in that wrapper, so it actually helps to support the heads while they're drinking. And then once they've been hydrated overnight, remove that cardboard wrapping and they will ping open very, very quickly. Now they do, once they're fully developed, they do then have a reasonable shelf life once in their fully developed stage, but do bear in mind they are not as strong as your generic florist rose, in respect that they're much softer, they have a slightly shorter vase life, they are more expensive than the commercially grown roses. Can be sold, the David Austin ones can be sold in wraps of 12, which we can get direct from auctions. Bear in mind though, they are subject to demand, so if they are in great popular demand, then you're going to pay that little bit more for them. We do sell them in wraps of 48, which we source directly from the farms. That does take a longer lead time, so if you are ordering in multiples of 48, you get a very much more cost-effective price for that, especially when they're pre-ordered. But do bear in mind we need a couple of weeks notice for that. Okay, so that's your David Austin roses. I also have this particular variety here that I showed you is actually called Rose Peony Pink, which is quite confusing sometimes because I have known people to purchase it online thinking that it is actually a peony, when in actual fact it's not. It is a rose, but it's called Peony Pink. So you can see how when they arrive they're in very tight buds. These have been conditioned in this position. Now removing the wrapping, I'm going to try and find one that's slightly, there we go, if we take this one, this is slightly more developed. Now you can see what I mean by the fact that the stems are much softer. So you can see then as it starts to fully open and develop, you get that very much peony-esque feel to it. So if I compare that next to the Sarah Bernhardt, you can see, yes, you've got a slight difference in colour tone, but you've got that same kind of multi-petaled soft feel to it. I'm trying to find a centre so you can see what I mean by the... So they do work in conjunction very well with each other or as a suitable substitute. We also have the Colombian Garden Roses. Now this, I have to be honest with you, this is my absolute all-time favourite rose, this one. This one is called White O'Hara. Let me just move those out of the way so you can see what I'm doing here. Now this White O'Hara, it is absolutely scrumptious. It smells fantastic, and it's got, I'll try and find one that's developed, there we go. So it's got that centre again that looks very peony-esque. I would say it works very well as a combination flower in the respect that, well, an intermediate flower perhaps, because it's got that white feel to it, but it has that very, very, very gentle blush pink centre to it. So pop that with your Sarah Bernhardt and your Duchesse de Nemours peony, and you can see it's got a very similar shape and size, much larger possibly than the David Austin. Now the Colombian Garden Roses are grown at a slightly higher altitude, so it does mean that they manage to produce these lovely strong, really rigid stems. So you can see, if I just compare that with the rather softer garden rose there, you can see these are a really good purchase. So this is the Colombian Garden Rose that we do need to have a longer lead time for purchasing on your behalf. You can buy them occasionally at auction, but it's not guaranteed. So if it's something you particularly want to include and it's a must-have flower, which in my opinion obviously it is, do make sure you give us a 2 weeks lead time on that so we can guarantee getting those in for you. So that's your White O'Hara. Yeah, absolutely scrumptious, that one. Okay, then finally there is another option. So due to the popularity of the Colombian Garden Roses and the David Austin roses, they do tend to hold their price because they are so popular. In Holland they are actually trying to produce a slightly more cost-effective rose, but still keeping true to the shape and the sort of general feel of the rose, really. So we're now getting on the market a rose that is grown to meet the shape and the style of the garden rose. This one is typical of those varieties. This one's called Patchouli, so it's a slightly lilac-y toned rose, and as you can see, does have that peony-esque feel and that garden rose feel. There are several varieties currently available and they are developing them all the time. The view being that we get this kind of product or this style of product but at a lesser cost, which is obviously going to please everybody's pocket. So this particular variety is called Patchouli. There are other ones available on the market at the moment. We've got one called Victorian Kiss, which is a pinky peach tone. We've got one called Hurricane, which is an orangey red, and one called Vuvuzuela, which is sort of coral with a bit of a hint of yellow tangerine to the centre of it. Now, some of them are fragranced and some of them aren't. So you don't always get that guaranteed fragrance with this style rose like you would with the Garden Roses or the David Austin roses. This particular one is fragrance, but some of them aren't. So if it is fragrance that you're going for, in my opinion, you're better off sticking with the Garden Roses or the David Austin roses. But if it's just the look that you want to achieve, you may find that this actually proves a slightly more cost-effective purchase for you. So let us know what you think. Peonies versus the Garden Roses. Jury's still out, I think, but I have to say nothing quite matches a peony for its romance and its elegance. But from a florist point of view, has to be the Garden Roses really. So thank you for joining us today on our educational video. I hope you found it really useful. Do keep tuned because we've got lots and lots of videos coming up showing how we can use roses and peonies, and enjoy the rest of the month of May. Thanks for watching.